Well, hi everybody. This is our next section of notes over histology. This is the second part of our epithelial tissue. So let's get busy here. Your essential question for today is which type of epithelial tissue would be found on the surface of the tongue? All right, as we get through these notes, you will be able to answer that question. All right, as said, this is the second part or the continued part for epithelial tissue, and this is part 3 of our notes for histology. All right, so we're starting with stratified epithelium. If you remember the last time, we talked about these simple epithelial types of tissue that there are. Stratified, remember, is when you have multiple layers of cells stacked up on each other. Okay, so stratified epithelium is when there are 2 or more cells thick. This first kind that we're going to look at here is called pseudostratified columnar epithelium. Okay, this prefix pseudo means it's kind of false, it's fake. This is like falsely stratified. All right. The function of this tissue is to move mucus by cilia action, and this type of tissue can be found in your upper respiratory tract, in the urethra, and in the gonads of males for where sperm mature. Okay, and you can see here that these are ciliated, and they do allow the movement of mucus along the top where the cilia are. The next type of epithelium here we have is stratified squamous epithelium. The function of this type of tissue is to protect, or the protection of superficial layers in the body. Locations for this type of tissue are, you have 2 types. One type is keratinized, and that would be superficial layers of the skin. Ever hear of the protein keratin? That's because of the superficial layers of the skin. And non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium would include wet surfaces such as your mouth, your tongue, and the tissue in the vagina. Next up, we have stratified cuboidal epithelial tissue. There's a picture of what it would look like in a microscope. The function of this tissue is for protection and limited secretion. So there's just a small amount of stuff that comes out of these cells, and that's what its purpose is. The location of these cells would be the sudoriferous glands or the sweat glands. Transitional epithelium, here's a picture of it, what it looks like under a microscope. And transitional means that this type of tissue changes. The shape of the cells themselves do change. And the function of this is to accommodate distension or stretching as fluid pressures change or vary. When the cells are stretched, they appear to be squamous or flattened. And when the tissue is relaxed, the cells appear to be cuboidal. Types of tissues that include this kind are found in the lining of the uterus, the urethra, the bladder, and in the vaginal wall. Okay, our last slide for today. We have the glandular epithelium, and this type of tissue is responsible for secretions. That's what the job of this kind of tissue is. There are 2 types of glands that we're going to look at here. You have the endocrine, what happens here is the hormones and the secretions are produced inside, and then they leave through the walls of the cell through the membrane of the cell rather, and they are released into the bloodstream. So the function of these cells is to produce hormones, and location of this tissue would be the thyroid gland, pituitary gland, and in the reproductive glands, the ovaries, and the testes. The next type of glands are the exocrine glands. These are also secretory glands, and the secretions are released out of some kind of duct. Okay. The first type we're going to look at here is the merocrine gland, merocrine secretion, which is also called eccrine. It forms the product, and it discharges from the cell entirely, such as the salivary glands. And here you can see that this is just an illustration of what happens here. The stuff that is produced by the cell. The saliva in this case, if we're talking about salivary glands, it's produced by the cell, and then the whole thing is ejected out of the cell, and it goes out of this duct, out of the tissue. All right, the next type of secretion would be an apocrine secretion. This product forms an apical at the apical surface, and it pinches off from the rest. So we can see here that the product is forming at the surface, and then it's pinching off and then being released out. Okay, the type of glands that go through this kind of secretion are the mammary glands, and the last type of gland we're going to talk about today is the holocrine secretion. This would be a secretion in which the secretory product accumulates in the cytosol of the cell, and once it's full, the cell dies and the whole cell is discharged with the product. An example of this would be the sebaceous glands or the oil glands, and that is what's responsible for acne, especially those pesky blackheads that you might get on your face. All right. Well, that concludes the notes for today. Remember to go back and answer that essential question regarding the type of tissue that forms the surface of your tongue. All right. Have a good day.